Bright and early, right after Labor Day. So welcome for everybody that's joined us bright and early this morning. Wanted to start out by introducing myself. My name is Nikki Caboose from Palm Beach Tech, well, South Florida Tech now, VP of Development. And this morning we are talking about Agile. So we've got three great panelists with us this morning. I'm going to briefly introduce everybody, and then we'll go right into the Q&A. To start out with, just wanted to, for anybody that's watching one of our community coffees for the first time, is we are a tech nonprofit, started just over 5 years ago, downtown West Palm Beach, built out into a countywide organization, and recently just announced that we are now regional, have partners and members from Miami to Martin County. And so we work with a lot of the colleges, universities, our coding schools, and of course, a lot of the headquartered companies here to bring people together through education, different panel discussions, and of course, networking events to connect the community. I want to start out here. What I'm going to do is just give a name and a title, and then I will release it to you guys to kind of give an overview of each of yourselves and what you do. I'm going to just start with the corner of my screen. So I've got Bobby Walters, Enterprise Agile Coach at NextEra Energy, Anjali Leon, the founder and principal of PPL Coach, and then David Hartmann, the founder and CEO from the SilverLogic. And if anybody hasn't noticed, what I did hopefully purposely that you guys noticed was I have somebody here from a larger enterprise organization, somebody that's an actual agile coach, and then somebody from a smaller startup company and successful startup company. So we can get a little bit of different points of view this morning. But if we could just start with, first on my screen is Bobby. If each of you can introduce yourselves, just tell us a little bit about what you do, and then we can go from there.
All right, perfect. Thank you, Nikki. Thanks for having me on the panel this morning. I'm excited to participate. But yeah, my name is Bobby Walters. I do work for NextEra Energy, so it's a very large player in the energy space. If you're in Florida, you probably know about FPL. So we do a lot to make sure we keep the lights on, and agility is a part of that. So my journey to NextEra started off with the software development and software, and through there kind of learned about the process. So number 6, Blue Agility, Salient Federal Solutions, a variety of mixes. And not to get too far into it, but agility has always been kind of what we had done. And it started with a small software company, and it just evolved. And I really liked helping out the people side of it. The coding is really cool, but to see the light bulb go off, so to speak, was a lot of fun. So that's where my career kind of went, and coaching is what I've been doing since.
And I've got next on my screen, Anjali.
Hi, good morning, everyone. And thank you for having me on this panel. So Anjali Leon, I'm an agility coach and consultant, and I run a boutique consulting practice called PPL Coach. Like Bobby, my background started out in technology, and I was a software engineer for many years. And working for a relatively small company, trying to find a process that made sense for us and that worked for us. And we landed on Scrum, which we're going to talk about a little bit later today, and agile ways of working. And again, like Bobby, the people side of what Agile brought to the table really resonated with me. And a few years ago, I kind of launched my own consulting practice, and I've been doing that ever since. And so I'm excited to talk about this topic today. So thank you for bringing it to the community, Nikki. I also love being part of the community, and particularly South Florida Tech. So thank you for allowing me to have that chance.
I couldn't have this discussion without you. And last but not least, David.
Hey, yes, good morning. Thanks for having me as well. Interesting to hear everybody else. Similar to everybody else, also I started as a software engineer, but as I founded the SilverLogic, we're a software engineering company, built custom technology for small businesses to large enterprises, but our focus is really on business automation and digital transformation for those small to medium-sized businesses, where we can really quickly develop interesting things that just give people time back. And that part's really exciting for me. As I said, my background also software engineer, so I used to do that just for my own things. When I had something that got in the way or that was really tedious, I was like, let me write a script for that. So now we're just doing that on a much, much larger scale. And there it's gone for me things that just give people time back, and that's that part.
Oh, sorry about that.
No worries. So as I transitioned initially from a software engineer, I then became the first Scrum Master of the company at some point, and led that transformation once I've drank some of the Kool-Aid and got really excited about introducing that concept to the company.
Perfect. Thank you, guys. So I'm going to go right into the Q&A. Some of these I made it easy, as far as for people that are, been, using Agile for a while and kind of know what it is. And of course, there's some more high level questions here for people that may be new to Agile. So I want to start out just asking the questions for those that may not be familiar. Can you give us a really high level definition, your point of view, like what is Agile? What does it mean? Whoever would like to take the question.
I'm going to take that, Nikki, because it is actually the most difficult question to answer if you even think about it from an Agilist perspective, because it is a pretty complex word. I'm going to answer it as I've started to think of it as in two different ways. One with an uppercase A, Agile, which is kind of an umbrella term that we use for a set of methods, methodologies, practices that allow us to work through stuff iteratively and incrementally. So we do little pieces at a time and we go over the same thing to improve on it. So that's from an uppercase A. There's a set of principles associated with it. There's a mindset associated with it. And the lowercase a, I would say, is equivalent to adaptable. That's how what do we need to do to be adaptable? I don't know if anybody else wants to challenge me or add to that.
I think that was a good definition. If anybody has anything to add.
No, thank you.
Everybody's good? All right. Well, I'm glad we agree this morning. All right. Well, my next question is, and again, I thought maybe this one, I don't know if there's some disagreement on this, or everybody's going to agree on this, but in your opinion, is Agile a methodology or is it more of a mindset? Because I've heard a lot of people say either or.
I think there, and I'll just jump in sort of with a quick answer from my side. I think I would call it a bit of both. That I would almost mindset, methodology, culture. For me, it's something that really has impacted and become part of the company entirely and from end to end. Where we introduced it initially for the Scrum, the development teams, but then even our marketing team uses Scrum, and even leadership as a whole, we introduced Scrum. So for that, I think Agile can be, if the organization, and I think that's often an important thing, that the organization sort of embraces that culture as a whole, that mindset, that methodology, then it can be something that's in all places. So I think its methodology gives a set of rules, but then also a mindset, something that you just sort of live and breathe without sounding too cliche. So I think a little bit of both there.
Does anybody have anything to add to that?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bobby.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's both as well, right? The mindset is very abstract and allows people to think about how to improve constantly. And then the process and methodology provide something practical. So people don't feel lost and getting lost in that, void of abstract. And because from a coaching perspective, right, Agile is a tool that people use to get their stuff done, their real job, kind of in quotes, done better. It's much like an athlete goes to do weight training to stay rehab, right? So they don't injure themselves while they're playing the game that they want to play. So we kind of look at it like that. And as I said, tools, a culture, a mindset. But no, I think it's both, right? They complement each other. One without the other, you're going to have, I think, some challenges.
Yeah. And I think it also gets infused into our way of being as individuals. It just becomes part of who we are.
Very good. And I know that this next question may also be a difficult one to answer, but and again, this is something that I think more for people that haven't gone through an agile transformation. What does an agile transformation look like for an organization? Like, what should they expect?
Persistence.
Persistence. Good
Yeah.
word.
There's many for us, and we're a small organization. Back when I was introduced to Agile, and I was like, oh, I keep hearing this thing, and Agile, and then specifically Scrum for us. Then this was now probably 7 years ago. Then we were still relatively small. We were like, what, I don't know, 6 people or so. So there wasn't that many people I had to convince. But it was still, people weren't used to the way of doing things. People were used to me assigning something to them, or I was used to a miserable Friday afternoon meeting with others to figure out what are we going to assign everybody for work for the week. And that was, for one, very miserable. But also once we transformed, there was this transitionary period, and I got this word of advice from one of the coaches I met back then, is that set yourself a timeline that you give yourself for the transformation, and then stick with that, because you're gonna want to give up somewhere throughout that timeline or multiple times, but you'll be really happy once you make it through it and you stuck with it. But before then, there's going to be so many moments where you're like, this can't be. I don't know how other companies are doing it. They're probably lying. They're not doing this. This is crazy. But especially the self-organizing principle of a team is something really different that folks aren't used to. I mean, I have to still break in new hires when they're like, yes, so you're going to assign me a ticket. I'm like, no, I'm not. You're going to pick one up. Choose one. There's a sprint. We planned it together. Go pick one. And that's something that I think took a moment for people where some were like, oh, no, I didn't have any tickets assigned. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do, to some others flourished in it right away. But it was a really great transformation to see that eventually everybody sort of really got into it and was happy with that way. And I was thrilled because now we went from 6 to now 38 or 40 people. And I couldn't imagine, like, even with my product owners did it, but really manually assigning everybody things, that would really be relatively terrible. But that for me was the biggest sort of piece. And I mean, there's so much more to the other rituals, but in my memory, that was one of the where the most resistance was given, but then also the biggest reward was for us, where aside from that was retrospective, which made a huge difference on us. But I think we're all warming up a little bit with each other, so I'll be quiet and let you guys take over.
Anjali, Bobby, did you? Okay, go ahead, Anjali. Sorry.
No, David, your story reminds me of my experience with Agile. I think it was a company that was similar to the size of your company. A relatively small when you were smaller, and what we were looking for was a process that wasn't bureaucratic, right? That was able to give us just enough of what we needed to scale, to be able to grow. And so when we think about transformation in a smaller organization, I think our mindset towards the customer, our interactions with each other, are much closer to an agile way of working than I've experienced in much larger organizations. So it felt like the transformation was more introducing a process. The mindset existed. When I coach larger companies, now it's a completely different story, where they have still a very a mindset that is a little more traditional, where the rules and the practices and the culture that has been put in place was for a different time. Sometimes when we look at it for different for management practices that were focused on efficiency, trying to do things in a repeated way as fast as possible. And when we introduce an agile way of working, we really are looking for people to start thinking for themselves, because things are changing so fast and moving so fast that they need to be able to make decisions on the fly. And so you can't have the CEO or the leader of the organization making all of the decisions, because that would just be too slow. And so that shift is really hard. And that's, I think, what you were referring to, David, in that self-organizing aspect of an agile way of working requires unlearning some things that we have put in place for many, many years and relearning something new. And I think that transition of is the struggle. And what's interesting when you said about the timeline, and I think, yes, you want to have a vision for what that was going to look like in the future, and something that is better or more beautiful than the one that you started with, so you can motivate people to move towards that. But I don't think it's there's an end to our transformation. I think it's a continuous journey that we are always finding ways to get better and improve, and so our patience and our recognition that there's always room to get better, I think, is another mindset shift that happens as we adopt an agile way of working, or we think about a transformation.
I'll quickly chime back in. Completely agree. There's not an end. There's more sort of when you think the MVP is ready, when you think
yeah.
You're gonna be okay with it. Just don't quit before.
Yes.
Bobby, did you have anything to add there?
No, I just like to echo a lot of what everybody's saying, and we, in a large organization that we have, especially with the regulated side and an unregulated side, is two different schools of thought, and it's a lot of unlearning. Like Anjali's point, the discomfort and learning something new, I think, is part of the transformation. And then again, like everybody was mentioning, is that once you get to that point where the culture can sustain, then it's about relentless improving. And we're trying to shift in that we're not always transforming, right? We're evolving, and that's a difference in how do we claim success? How do we build on top of it? How do we keep moving forward? But no, I agree. I think transformation, as much as we'd like it to be the same, it's going to be slightly different, and that's where coaching expertise and having some of those battle scars comes into play. But the idea is that cliche of get comfortable being uncomfortable, and then not afraid to make it a bi-directional conversation, and where people get comfortable with that top-down, sort of like David was saying, all right, just assign me what to do. I'll do it. I'll do it to the best I can. That's why you hired me. But now I have to think, oh, that's a whole other ball game. But,
yeah, and I actually want to start with Bobby for this next question as well, because David and Anjali both kind of referenced it in their last answer. I wanted to talk a little bit more about how leadership roles and responsibilities differ. Like, how do leadership have to kind of change their mindset when moving to Agile than what they're used to, especially for a larger organization such as NextEra?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good question. I would say, any well-established company that has a history, right? It takes time to overcome that, because change just takes time, right? To adapt. If you're coming in with a new process, a new methodology, and you've been doing it for a year, but that company's been in business for 50, that's a small fraction of the lifespan. And leadership, they've evolved in that prior history, that culture, to going up in promotions. So they're used to that old way, the previous way, right? It's a different style. And what we're finding is that we're trying to better describe how does an agile leader work versus how does a leader use agility, and how do they operate with their peers, with their reports, and think, well, again, differently, right? So it's not just a mandate that teams use agility, but how does a leader understand how to use these practices and then radiate back up, so that way they can tell a good story, or at least tell the reality of things, and then get that feedback and then relay that to the team in a way that they can leverage it, right? So it's not always a critique, by providing transparency. And that's another thing we've been very cautious of, is that not turning agility into a weapon, right? So now we're talking about being open and having collaboration and talking. So leaders in a sort of that waterfall approach, right? There's a timeline, you have to hit the timeline, have to hit the deliverables. And now it's agility where they think, oh, we kind of have an impediment, we need to pivot. Like, ooh, that's a scary conversation. So there's a lot of difficult conversations to have in a culture that's set up that way, and one that I think any company is going to continue to have to invest time in making change in. But yeah, leaders, we want to make sure that they're a part of it, right? And unfortunately, like with a larger company, right, you have your president or the highest levels, so you might be like 6 or 7 away from that top pyramid. And there's all these people in the middle that are asked to change, but report back to people that maybe aren't as touched by it like a team is. So they're in a very compromising position in that, well, we have to take what an Agile team is doing, be able to translate that up. And that's where the sticking point is. And one of the reasons why you're supposed to attack it from the middle and then kind of go both directions, right? You have to make sure that the people that have been in that culture for the longest have the most coaching.
Very good. Anjali, did you look like you were going to say something? I don't know if you had something to add there.
I was so resonating with what Bobby was saying. Absolutely. All of those things are so vital. And one of the words that you mentioned is transparency, in actually allowing other people to be able to make good decisions that are for the benefit of the company. So now when we have self-organizing teams, when we try to enable decentralized decision-making, give more autonomy to everybody in the organization, if we want people to all move in the direction that benefits the organization, the leaders, it's their role to be able to share what is going on, the context, that people can make the good and the right decisions, align in the same direction, and make sure that the team has the skills and the competence in order to be able to take on this responsibility of autonomy and self-organization. And so that's how the role shifts. It's not telling people what to do, but giving them the context and the capability to do what is being asked of them. To me, that is the big shift in responsibility of leaders as we kind of shift to an agile way of working.
Very good. Thank you, Anjali. And I guess this next question is for any of you, but especially now with us dealing with just the pandemic that we're going through, how do you think that does Agile make it easier, or is it more difficult, or how can we use Agile to work with geographically distributed teams or even remote working teams? Like I said, especially now through the pandemic, but there's a lot of companies, of course, that were even remote prior to this. So can you talk a little bit about just working remote or being geographically distributed and using Agile?
Yeah, I think here I was really glad that we were before already partially distributed, had a global team. So half the team is in South Florida, the other half is globally distributed. And I was glad that forced us, before all this happened, to already be set up to be functional in a remote setting. Because back in March, I gave the order for everybody to, hey, tomorrow just start working from home, and was glad everybody had laptops. So now I think everybody got used to how to figure out how to work Agile, how to do Scrum or Kanban or whichever methodology you're using, to use that in a remote and distributed setting. And I think there's a lot of neat things if you have everybody in a room. We designed our office layout to give each Scrum team its own room, so that the walls are with whiteboard. All the ideas that are connected to that team, all the discussions can just happen by spinning around on your chair and talking with each other. But I think there's a lot that can be. We have our daily stand-ups on Google Hangout. Everybody's connected through Slack. And so far in the last couple of years, and even now throughout the pandemic, we've been still very connected with each other. I think through technologies, through having it that everybody shows up in a stand-up. I mean, for that, I think it was a lifesaver that we are using Scrum, that we have that stand-up every morning, that's just part of our ritual. We're going to see everybody once a day at least. And then if there's a refinement or some sidebars, more is going to happen from there. So I think it's very possible. It is nicer to be all together in a room, but many of the things where you aren't, for example, for estimation poker, we just wrote a little tool if we have the set of cards that we can give estimates on and give points to something. To use Fibonacci sequence, and we have the little cards that we would hold up secretly and then flip over. But because we hired some people that were remote, we just built one as a little side project that would do it in real time and would flip it over in real time, and where people had cute little icons like, hey, I want to slice this, or I need a coffee break. So many of the gaps can be, I think, also bridged with technology.
Yeah, I actually think that those organizations that had adopted an agile way of working probably had an easier time with this transition, because it gave us a mechanism, like even if David is referring to Scrum, one of the methodologies that kind of gives you some framework around when do you meet for planning, and when do you meet to review the work, and when do you meet to inspect and adapt, and when do you check in with each other. So you already have that framework in place. And so we didn't have to like try to figure out how to do that when COVID hit. But to another point is if we were completely reliant on our physical proximity to each other, because some teams, didn't even use electronic tools, because how easy and how agile can we be if we just use whiteboards, and if we have all of our work just represented on a physical board and we are able to talk to each other. So I think for those teams, they had to start leveraging technology. And there's lots of awesome technology out there to leverage to continue to keep us collaborating, so that we are not just coming to a meeting and just using only our words or our voice to collaborate. There's a lot of tools out there that kind of simulate sticky notes that we got used to, or getting individual input, or like David said, some things that we would do physically with like these cards and stuff to gamify some of our work can be done through technology. And so we have to completely embrace that in order to be able to, to leverage the good things that came with an agile way of working. I'm curious, Bobby, about what your teams are doing at NextEra, because you probably have adopted a few different things that we could all learn from.
Yeah, the company does make use of a lot of different teams in different time zones. So we've been practicing a lot of that remote connectivity, and I think you're right. Like the collaboration is very important, but also the active participation. If you don't have the active, and the engagement, then you don't have that team, the collective ownership of getting things done. So if everybody went remote and then didn't connect, there would be a very hard time in getting a story done, or a scope of work completed. And I think initially it's a big shock, right? The company that's got physical presence, and now all of a sudden they're asked to go and work from home. There was a lot of things that we learned from, but in general, I think, like you said before, the companies that have adapted Agile probably had an easier time in navigating the very fluid dynamic of this, because at one point it was like, oh, it's getting better, and then it was like, okay, now we need to shift, and obviously here we are. But no, I think having that exposure already, using the tools, getting some good infrastructure in place, and then the culture willing and able to adapt made a big difference. But yeah, we haven't lost the collaboration techniques, and we actually came up with some fun ways to do like team lunches and dinners. So we would get like Uber Eats and order all from the same restaurant. So we would get on, well, we don't use Zoom, but like WebEx or Teams. And that way it all felt like we had a little bit more connection, even though we weren't at the same restaurant. We were eating from the same menu, and little fun things like that, just to help make sure that we stay connected.
Awesome. I like that. It's actually pretty creative and interesting there. It's fun. Well, a couple of you actually already referenced a few of the different Agile methodologies. So I want to ask, do you believe in following a single Agile methodology as prescribed, or do you believe that alternative or like mixing different approaches is acceptable?
Yeah, from my experience, I would have to say that I've never seen it by the book. I think if you're following it by the book, then you're perhaps missing out on the whole philosophy and the mindset, and that, well, we need to take the learning from this, understand it, right? The shuhari, right? So first understand it, practice it for a while, and then adapt it to it's more efficient for your own use. And our approach, even outside when I was doing consulting, it was always kind of custom fit, right? Start with some of the basics, get the fundamentals in, and then kind of tailor it. Again, using like a sports analogy is a way to reference it. Baseball in particular, right? There's always the same kind of mechanics. You have a pitcher, the catcher, and then the batter. You have to be in the box in order to swing. And if you look at the mechanics of how everybody kind of winds up and gets ready, right? They all might shuffle a little bit differently, hand gestures, or play with the gloves a little bit, have sap on the bat, all different things. But when it comes right down to it, you can all see they almost always get in the exact same position, right? There's a way to make sure you can get the most efficient swing, hit the ball in good contact. And that's what I think a lot of the Agile, kind of transformation adoption is all about, is what tool can help change the culture to get to that ultimate result, and guide and use change management practices to help people get there, because they don't know how to get to that perfect swing yet. All they're seeing is the person in the box doing all this swinging around. It looks cool, looks fun. Well, how come we're not doing that? That's what I want to do. I want to hit the home runs. And you gotta move quickly but deliberately, and be taking some calculated risks, but then mitigate the fallout from those things. So that way you can operate safely, but still move the needle and again show progress. So I would say you have a whole bunch of tools in your toolbox. You need to try some out and find the right one that works the best.
I think there's great, as you said it, there's this great aspect, such as, for example, Lean has awesome principles in it that are just, again, an addition to that mindset, to that Agile mindset, or part of that Agile mindset that can be added on. For example, we have Scrum as our methodology and main mindset, but we follow Lean principles. They're just also ingrained in us and applied.
Yeah, the same here in terms of most of the work that I do has a base framework of Scrum, which I love the sports analogy, Bobby. I use it often, and I love the way you explain it, because that's true. It says there's a certain set of things that just have been found to work well. And so then how you do it is where you have the fluidity. So you have to experiment and see what works for your context. But when we have a situation that is changing, where maybe priorities are shifting, or there's a lot of change that's happening, the Scrum framework is a beautiful framework for us to give us those set of practices that allow us to kind of work through it. But bringing Lean principles, bringing things from Kanban. If you're a technology team and you're not using some of the extreme programming practices, you're really losing out, because those are the places where you can get, how do you improve on that swing? How do you take a stance that will allow you to win? How do you, kind of give your eye signals or hand signals to your teammates? Those are all the things that we can borrow from all of these other frameworks and methodologies. But start with something, inspect and adapt, and make it principle based. So there's principles of Lean, there's principles of Agile. And when we make these shifts, when we try to tweak things to our context, make sure that we're not doing it just to become comfortable with what we did before, that we're moving forward towards these set of principles that are found to work. So I think that can be the basis, the foundation, kind of our North Star as we inspect and adapt and change and shift.
Perfect. Thank you all for that answer. And Todd, I saw your question in the chat, so hopefully they just answered that. I knew that question was coming in my Q&A, so I figured I'd wait till then. Todd says, new question here while we're on this topic is, do you find any software that actually helps you maintain this Agile mentality?
So a lot of our team, the teams that we work with use some tools to be able to, if they're using the Scrum framework, there's some tools that allow you to make your time boxes. So Scrum has time box elements to it. So to make that time box visible and what work we've taken in that time box visible, and the progress of that work. So there are tools that are available for us to be able to capture that and kind of reinforce our ways of interacting with each other. The same thing with Kanban. So in terms of the work in progress, I think that there's tools like Jira, there's Azure DevOps, and I don't know what other things y'all are using, Bobby and David. But from that aspect, you have all these tools. On the other side, if David mentioned Slack, so that we need tools to be able to communicate regularly with each other, especially if we're remote. And so having those things available, Teams, Bobby mentioned Teams. So those are all ways in which we can stay in touch with each other, to speak to each other as quickly, as possible, get our questions answered from each other as quickly as possible. And so kind of keep that mentality of keeping things moving.
Yeah, I'd agree. So for us, we use Jira. We tried out a variety of tools, but landed on Jira and have stuck with it because it makes, as we described it earlier, that framework piece, the different elements that you need to sort of have in place, the methodology, it just makes that easy to be guided and have it, and then just use it and be able to apply it. And along with having Google Hangouts and Slack that just bridge that geographically dispersed aspect of it, so that we are back in one room virtually now, just like we're virtually together on a panel. So there's those aspects, I think, that are really important. So because everybody would mention, like Jira comes to mind of almost anybody, but I think in that tool belt, something like Slack, Hangouts, or Teams, and different instant messaging and video conferencing tools can be brought up, but having something of that type where you're centralized, since I could not imagine how, even if we're together in one room, how Agile would work if we were communicating via email. Like that's just not possible. Like, because I mean, even in one room, I'll send a Slack to someone. Oh, here's a snippet of code, or here's this piece, or I have a question. I'm not going to get up and walk over to you. But so any of that, I think, is really important, and those are really the core. And then, as I mentioned, we built a little estimation tool for us so that we can do estimation without influencing each other. There, we learned it was very important that not one person says, oh, I think this is 5 points, but rather that I pick my number and then I put it down and the others can do it. And once everybody has given their estimation, then it gets revealed to everybody. And that's something that we really liked in the local setting. So we use the tool now to make that happen, even when we were geographically dispersed, to have that benefit of not influencing each other and coming up with estimates that are really true, the most true, and can then have that useful discussion that comes out of it. If someone says this is a 3 and this is an 8, where that's part of the point of having other aspects of Agile, where you can then see, hey, I thought this is an 8 because I think this is difficult and this is difficult. And then someone else can say, oh yeah, I didn't think of that. And vice versa, someone could think, oh no, that's super easy. I don't know, payment integration. Stripe makes terminal integration so easy. It's 3 points is fine. So having that really valuable discussion is just another part for me of that.
Bobby, did you have anything there to add?
Yeah, just like you said, like the software, right? So it's a tool, and I think as long as we have the tools to help make sure we can get the collaboration to ultimately get aligned, so that way we have a way to fulfill our vision, so we have purpose, everybody's on the same page and collaborating, and a good sense of understanding, then that will help, I think, keep that Agile mindset, that mentality of working together. And like I said, there's a variety of options, and it just kind of comes down to what's the best fit for kind of your enterprise and your approach, and a variety of factors go into that. But I agree. I think as long as it's a tool, it doesn't get in the way. It helps maintain that those collaboration points for alignment occur. Then it's a good tool.
Very good. So it sounds like there's a lot of different options out there as long as it serves your purpose and your organization's purpose. Very good. I'm learning. My next question. So this one, I'm personally very interested in this answer, but I've always wondered, what mistakes have organizations made trying to implement Agile? And maybe if you guys have some insights into some of those experiences that you've seen others, have some failures through that we can all learn from.
I think there I mentioned one early on. For me, one that I've seen in others is one, just quitting too early, stopping the transformation. And then a second one is going to the re part of it, of that learning, the shuhari, from adopting, just going by the book, to tweaking some things, to customizing it, jumping to the customizing too quickly before really understanding why certain things are the way they are. I've heard it way too many times that people are like, retrospective, we don't need that. It's useless. Review, nah. Why bother? Where if you haven't done it a few times and really gotten the fruit out of it, and something like a retrospective, if you have one or two or even four, like if you, depending on how long your sprints are, that's not something that you're not going to necessarily see the fruits of your investment quite yet. For me, the retrospectives was one of the most sort of mindset changing and exciting things about Scrum, but it's also the one that's the most sort of, if you look at it from the more leadership perspective, you're going to have people sit together and just share their feelings if you take it out of the context. And that sounds crazy, but to analyze really of, hey, what went well this week, what we're going to be proud of, and what can be improved, and where can we make a difference, I think is one of the most powerful tools in Scrum, but also overall in Agile, to have that whole mindset of, let's reflect on the work we did and see how can we improve on a regular basis, which I think is one of the most helpful things to apply that change, and thereby the team can become better and better. And that's, I think, something else that just, if you don't stick with the by the book version for long enough, you might make changes that you just wanted to make it convenient for yourself and make it so that it's isn't so painful and uncomfortable to be in that position.
That's right.
So I think those are my two most common mistakes that I've seen, and mostly the recommendation for it is just set yourself a timetable for how long you're going to stick with it, until, give it 3 months, until you think, okay, then I'm going to be less uncomfortable. And then as you mentioned earlier, you're never going to be done. Just as you have retrospectives for your team, you're going to have retrospectives for your whole organization, and keep learning and adopting to the mindset and methodology of, hey, what is the best? I mean, I love going to, or used to love going to conferences, and just getting the new influxes of what are other ideas, what have other people applied. And sometimes it's one sentence that I take away from a day-long event, but that sentence can make a huge difference. And that like just one nugget, one piece. So I think that continuously learning while sticking to it for a certain time, to make sure you really get into it and discover that value that some people thought long and hard about of why to put that together.
Yeah.
Bobby or Anjali, do either of you have any great failure stories there, learning lessons?
I have many badges of failure. Every step of the way. If you're not trying something new, a lot of new things, then we're not going to be able to do something different. So from a transformation perspective, I think one of the things that we forget is that Agile is not only tactical, the doing part of hands on keyboard and delivery, and that we don't give enough credence and time to thinking. that we have to stop and plan. While the plan is somewhat useless, the planning part is absolutely essential in terms of us coming together to figure out what is the strategy for us to move forward. And so I think in a lot of places we don't give enough credence for that. We don't give enough time for that. And the people who have to really give that air cover for that to happen are the leaders. People who are in a leadership role in an organization, let me put it that way, because everybody should really step up to be a leader in every way. But people who have that privilege of being in a leadership role in an organization have to realize they go first. They have to be agile too. Like David mentioned, his leadership team is also practicing the same thing. And so this is not just about agile software delivery teams working in a new way. It's about everybody in the organization thinking and working in a new way. And so many times when we think of it as just something that is happening in the IT department within agile teams, I think that's one place where we might be tripped.
Thank you. And I do want to ask, the question is, obviously all of you are, advocates for, Agile and seen it work successfully, but how do you know if Agile isn't right for your organization, or what are maybe some examples of another approach, or maybe the waterfall approach might actually be better for your organization or for your team?
Anybody wants to?
No, that's a tricky question, right? Because we get, depending on what your industry is, right? There's a lot of things that might be kind of preset or have been done a lot before, right? So they fall into that pattern of, like their comfort zone. And especially if you're building like a physical structure, right? They always say like, well, there's a certain set plan, there's that have to be met, it has to be done by this date, it has to get this out by a certain period of time. And again, maybe it's just because of my background and my way of thinking, like I just see that as incremental improvement to get the whole building done, right? There's certain pieces you have to do first. You lay your foundation, stand up walls, wiring, all the good stuff there. But I think if you're applying the Agile mindset, it shouldn't matter what your industry is, right? Even though if you have, there's certain policies and procedures that you have to do for regulation purposes or for safety. We don't want to cut corners. That quality is very important. But the approach in what you take when an unknown materializes and an impediment comes up, or before that risk happens, how do we handle it? I think the Agile mindset can go and really help provide an environment to have that discussion without being, like pointing fingers or having a blame game. Just say, okay, here's the situation. What are we going to do about it? And then, overcome those obstacles. So even though, if you're developing software, the approach to that and being able to manipulate code is a little bit easier than going out and changing a physical structure that's been like concrete that's been poured. But I think there shouldn't be any limits, right? It's sort of when your creativity stops, then you're probably missing out on some other things, right? There's opportunities, I think, to improve. Lean Six Sigma, which was mentioned before by David, I think there's opportunities all the time for process improvement. And even if it's not using Scrum or anything else that's very specific, if you have that relentless improvement mindset, the Agile philosophy, I think you can go far.
Perfect. Thank you for that answer. And I do want to ask also kind of, I guess, part two of that question is if you have, because some organizations, obviously, I think you want the organization as a whole to follow Agile methodologies and practices, but there's still a lot of companies that have implemented Agile just within certain teams or departments, and there may not be other teams or departments. So what is, or maybe some tips and tricks or some advice on how Agile teams can work with non-Agile teams the best?
Yeah, from my perspective, I would say like you have to look at the points of intersection, right? So if it's the whole company, then obviously we're all working towards a common goal, right? Keep the company moving forward. If you're generating revenue, generate revenue. That way you can progress. You can grow a company and be successful. So I would say, again, with the Agile mindset, if you're working with process or physical structures or software development, if you're inspired to collaborate. You're getting that alignment, and Anjali mentioned, the plan itself isn't as important, but that planning, that opportunity for alignment and different perspectives coming into play, so we don't miss out on something. I think that can drive an organization to new heights, and that's what I think. Bigger organizations, you have to look at it at scale, right? There's economies of scale. You have to know, how do we test the waters, move forward cautiously, but then what's our definition of success? And then how do we propagate that out? And what's the right approach? And all of those variety of factors come into play. There is no silver bullet. Depending on who's your sponsor, what's moving forward, what was the driving force to bring agility in? Is your company on the brink of maybe not being successful and you're considering like bankruptcy? Then that's a different motivating factor than, hey, we need to be more innovative, right? There's different drivers for a lot of those things. But again, depending on the nature and what kind of scale, I think there's approaches that you can take, and realizing it's all people, right? We all have to work together, and it doesn't matter if it's a big company or small. There will be points in time, if you change positions, you're going to have different interactions with a variety of people. So you don't want to burn bridges. You always want to be helpful, and just because the process is there, it shouldn't get in the way of doing all that.
Amen.
You agreed to that one, huh, Anjali? That answer. I have, just for sake of time, we've got about 2-3 minutes left here. So I want to finish up just by asking the question, what would be one piece of advice, or if somebody were to take one, nugget away from this conversation, what would you give towards new Agile teams? Anybody that's just give me one thing that I should remember. I'm new to using Agile. What would that be?
If you're brand new, it's going to get worse before it gets better. So hang in there and be patient.
I'll chime on or add on to that. That was very similar going to be to mine. But then sort of the next piece is really embrace that retrospective. I think it's one of the easiest to brush over, but it is also one of the most valuable pieces. Retrospective, when in whatever shape you track that constant improvement, and how do you reduce waste, how do you get better, any of the methods to have iterative approaches and constant improvement.
Yeah, and I'd just like to add to that there is no crystal ball, right? We can't peer into the future. We don't know all the answers, but if we're afraid to take the first step, then we'll never make any progress. So I think, again, the piece for the culture is establish a way to move forward safely.
Very good.
And
thank you all. Oh, go ahead, David.
Round two, but just one nugget that I heard some point before that really summarizes this. Someone told me that I heard this at a conference, that today is the day that you know the least. Mm. And if you let that sink in for a second, I mean, he expressed it a little harsh. I think he said, today is the day you're the dumbest of your life, but just that you know the least is, it could be a nicer way of saying it, but it's just that there's so much more that you will learn tomorrow, the day after, and things that you don't want to necessarily commit to implementing it a certain way. If in 3 weeks, you'll know so much more about that. And that just, it came to mind as Bobby was describing his part, and I was like, no, this is one that really has helped me a lot on the journey, and I felt like sharing.
I appreciate that. I mean, I think from all the sentiments this morning, it sounds like almost anything in life that's you're gonna have some real results from, something that's good in the end, and exercising, eating healthy, learning anything new, is that it's going to be difficult before it gets better. But it sounds like, in the end, is that, of course, all of you, why you're advocates for this is because you've seen the results, you've seen the positivity come out of this. And so I thank you. I think I had all the right people this morning on this panel, and really glad that I got to hear from different points of view as well. So hopefully everybody else enjoyed this conversation, and I'm sure there's much more we can talk about. So we'll probably have to do a part 2 at some time, but I do thank you all for being on the panel this morning.
Thank you, Nikki. Thank you for creating the space for this.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have